Okay, the time is now 7 o'clock. I'd like to now call the meeting to order. If you could please rise and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Mr. Hicks. Okay, thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Greenberg.
Here.
Hicks. Here. Mako.
Here.
Pollyea is absent. Shapaka.
Here.
Suriano.
Here.
Tamarkin.
Here.
Okay, next agenda item, additions, corrections to the agenda. I believe there are none. Next, approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the June 12th, 2024 meeting?
So moved by Hicks.
I have a motion by Mr. Hicks. Do I have a second?
Second, Suriano.
Second by Mr. Suriano. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Hicks.
Yes.
Suriano.
Yes.
Mako.
Yes.
Shapaka.
Yes.
Tamarkin.
Yes.
Greenberg.
Motion passes. Next agenda item, swearing in of applicants and speakers. I'll now recognize the city attorney for the next motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are now at the public hearing portion of the meeting. The public hearing will operate as follows. Administrative staff will make a presentation or comment on the application. The applicant or their representative may then make a presentation or comment on the application. The applicant has 10 minutes to present, and additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. Public comment will then be open for 3 minutes allowed per speaker. Additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. Speakers must complete a speaker slip and come to the podium and state their name and address. The applicant will then be given 10 minutes to comment. Additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. If there is more than one application pending for a particular address, the presentation on each application may be consolidated and presented as one. At this time, will persons wishing to present testimony this evening please rise and raise your right hand to be sworn in? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, state I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. Next agenda item, applications and public comment. The first agenda item we have is a design review, and I'll read this into the record. We have DR-0009-2024 to consider a design review application for site plan and landscaping for .53 of 15 acres at 817 North Hamilton Road. Parcel ID 025-001918, current zoning RID, One Church, David Domine, applicant. Recognize the administration for a brief presentation. Ms. Kapka?
There is also an associated variance application.
That is V-0015. That's the next one. If you want to read them together, to be considered together.
Okay, certainly. So we'll put the variance application as well. In that case is V-0015-2024 to consider a variance application of various sections 1154.03A7 and 1163.05A and 1163.06A, 1163.08B through G, and 1167.18 B1 of the codified ordinances, City of Gahanna, for property located at 817 North Hamilton Road, parcel ID 025-001918, current zoning RID, One Church, David Domine, applicant.
The first project of the night includes design review and variance applications for a temporary gravel parking lot at 817 North Hamilton Road, which is the One Church site. These applications were filed under the previous zoning code, so all of the older regulations apply. The site is currently zoned restricted institutional district and is located on the west side of North Hamilton Road, just north of the intersection with East Johnstown Road. Before I get into the details of the project, I'm going to go over a brief history of development that's occurred on the One Church site, mainly related to parking. In June of 2017, a design review application was approved for 233 new parking spaces. Minor modifications to this parking lot were approved in 2020. Those modifications did not change the number of parking spaces. In April of last year, another design review application was approved for a new parking lot and landscaping in the northeast corner of the lot. This brought the current parking count to 561 spaces, which is how it is today, not including the gravel lot. Planning Commission also added a condition of approval for additional screening along the northern property line of this parking lot. In October of last year, the gravel lot was installed prior to city approvals. Applications were filed that same month due to code enforcement action. Last month, the design review was approved for building modifications to Building C. This application did not include any parking modifications. There are currently final development plan, design review, and variance applications in staff review for a building addition and major parking lot modifications at the site. Once again, the applicant is requesting approval of design review and variance applications for a temporary gravel parking lot. The zoning code, both the current one and the previous one, do not permit gravel lots anywhere in the city. Therefore, a variance application is required. The lot is 23,000 square feet and has approximately 60 to 70 parking spaces. It is also located 21 feet from the front property line along Hamilton Road, so a setback variance is required for that as well. The applicant states that the lot was installed for overflow parking for their Sunday service. The lot was originally going to be removed in summer of 2024 when the application was originally filed 8 months ago. The applicant has stated that this has been pushed back to fall of 2024. Here is a site plan of the property. In yellow is the parking lot that was approved in April of 2023. That lot has now been constructed. In blue is the parking lot addition that was approved in June of 2017. And red shows the approximate location of the gravel lot. Here is a site plan that shows the exact location and size of the gravel parking lot. You can see that it's located in the southeast corner of the property to the front of the primary church building. It encroaches 15 feet into the 36-foot front yard setback, but it is located out of the side parking setback. Here are photos that show what the parking lot looks like today. Here you can see that the parking lot is installed on a portion of the property that's elevated higher than where the church building is at, which increases visibility along the right-of-way. You can also see that there is not much existing screening besides the 4 trees that are planted in front of the lot, so that also increases visibility from the right-of-way. The image on the top left is a view from across the street at the Heartland Bank property. The image on the right is a view from the sidewalk. So here you can see the close proximity between the sidewalk, which represents the edge of the right-of-way, and the lot. And the final image is a view from the existing One Church parking lot. These are the specific variances that are being requested by the applicant. The first is to the requirement that the parking lot must be at least 36 feet from the right-of-way. The gravel lot is only 21 feet from the right-of-way. The next is that all parking lots must be hard surfaced with either cement or asphalt or a similar material. Gravel is not considered a hard surface, so a variance is required. The next is that all parking lots must provide adequate lighting. There is no lighting provided on this lot. The applicant states that lighting is not necessary since the lot is only used during the day. Next is 6 total variances to interior landscaping requirements. These were consolidated into one as they're all pretty similar requirements. These include that the parking lot must be screened from the right-of-way, the parking lot must have interior landscaping through islands, and 1 tree must be planted per 100 square feet of required landscaping area. There is no new landscaping included with these applications due to the temporary nature of the lot. The final variance is to screening requirements. The zoning code requires that parking lots that are adjacent to residential must have a 6-foot tall continuous screen of at least 80% opacity. This can be achieved through landscaping, mounding, or fencing. There is no new screening provided between the parking lot and the residential lot to the south. However, there is some existing mature foliage there, but it does not reach 80% opacity. Here's the criteria that must be met in order for the applications to be approved. The first applies to the design review portion of the application. So this is compatibility with existing structures, contributes to the improvement of the design of the district, contributes to the economic and community vitality of the district, and maintains, protects, and enhances physical surroundings. The next criteria is for the requested variances. The three of these apply to each of the variances separately. So there are special circumstances or conditions that apply. The granting of the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of property rights, and the granting of the variance will not have any detrimental effects to public welfare or the surrounding neighborhood. Staff recommends disapproval of the design review as submitted. Staff does not believe that the design review criteria has been met. There are no other gravel lots in the immediate area, and it is very visible from the right-of-way since there's no existing screening. It's located on a higher elevation portion of the lot. It's in front of all buildings on the site, and it also encroaches 15 feet into the front parking setback. Most of the previously approved gravel lots in the city were in industrial areas, and most of these were approved as temporary lots, which is a difficult condition to enforce. Multiple of these temporary lots still exist and have not been removed years past the timeline that was conditioned by Planning Commission. An example of this is on Eastgate Parkway, where there's a gravel lot for truck parking that was supposed to be removed after 3 years in 2018, but still exists to this day. However, if the design review application is approved, staff recommends that Planning Commission add a strict timeline as well as any desired conditions for dust control, screening, or other related items. However, Planning Commission did add a condition of approval on the One Church's application from April of 2023 for the northeast parking lot. This condition was for increased screening along the northern property line, and this condition has not been met by the applicant. The city received a complaint from a resident that the screening condition had not been fulfilled. So the city went out with the forester and did a site inspection and found that the majority of required landscaping had not been installed along that parking lot, and a notice of violation was issued to One Church. They are currently working with city staff to remedy this violation. And with that, oh wait, sorry, I have one more slide. Staff also recommends disapproval of the following variances. The first is a setback variance. Staff believes that if a gravel lot is to be installed, it should meet as many of the zoning requirements as possible, especially the front setback. The next variance that staff recommends disapproval of is that all parking lots must be hard surfaced. This is for the reasons stated in the previous slide. If the design review is approved, staff does recommend approval of the three following variances because these are all typical for gravel lots, especially ones that are temporary. This is for parking areas must provide adequate lighting, interior landscaping requirements, and parking areas must be screened from residential lots. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kapka. We'll now open public comment. Would the applicant like to comment? Okay, if you could, again, please state your name, address, and association with the project, please.
Yeah, my name is Greg Ford. I'm the lead pastor at One Church, address 817 North Hamilton Road. I wanted to share a few thoughts, and then I'll have Dave Dominy come up and share a little bit specifically about the application. But first of all, I want to start by just apologizing. I know that some of the things we've done are out of sequence, but I want to express that the spirit of our organization, even the decisions that we've made, have been trying to be as good as citizens as we possibly can. Our church has grown quite a bit, and a big part of the heart of our church is to serve our community. We have actually this week is our Love Thy Neighbor Week. We have 250 people doing 9 community service projects throughout this area, and so we don't want to be somebody that just stops up traffic or creates frustrations in terms of traffic flow and headache. We really do want to be a blessing and a gift to this community. The gravel lot, obviously, is not within the code, which is why we're asking for a variance. But just to understand the spirit of that decision, we have about 70 to 80 cars that park on that lot. That represents about 150 people that if they didn't park there would be parking across Hamilton Road, children, people walking back and forth. We have people that sometimes would just park straight on the grass. We had one week we had to tow 5 people, 5 cars out of that lot. And so instead of making Hamilton Road a mud pit and continue to have cars get stuck, or people playing Frogger back and forth across the road, that was the spirit of that decision. And even the plantings in the northeast lot was an attempt to be really good neighbors. We met with our friends at Castle Pines. Dave actually met with a number of them and walked the area and let them pick out some different plantings and things that they wanted, because we realized that was going to be what they were looking at. So that was a desire to try to be as kind as we could be. And somebody who I believe wasn't there, it didn't meet their approval, and so I think that's how everything got brought back up. My point in wanting to share this is just, I know it could appear like we somehow think we're above the law, or we don't care, or we're just doing these things haphazardly. We're actually really trying to be as good as citizens and partners as we can possibly be. And so I would just ask for some leniency. As you know, we have a lot of projects in the queue right now with expanding the lot, expanding the facility to meet the growing church. And so this lot would be extremely temporary. As soon as we're able to get everything approved and get all the work done, it'll be gone. So this isn't something we intend to have any longer than we would need to. And obviously that timeline would depend on these other horizontal plans that we're working on with you guys. And so just asking that instead of having people going back and forth across Hamilton Road, I think people have proven they're going to continue to come. They're not going to stop coming because of that. But instead of having people get stuck in that area, or for us to just replant something that's got to be taken right back out, or feels like all 3 of those options are really bad. And so I guess I'm just asking for you guys to consider this.
I'm David Dominy. I'm the expansion director for One Church. My address is 128 Academy Woods Drive in Gahanna, Ohio. So first, let me just thank Maddie for a great presentation, terrific summary, and really well done. We understand, as Greg shared, we made a mistake here. We shouldn't have installed that lot when we did. I just want to speak to a couple specifics here. I have this, sorry. She already outlined the variance details very, very well. Again, the special circumstances here are that it is very temporary. We could be as early as 11 weeks, pending approval from engineering, for where we actually start doing construction on the new site development and the auditorium development that we're planning. So this was always going to be a very temporary situation. Again, out of order, and certainly not done correctly, but that was the intention of it, to be temporary, and that's our main, I think, our main point here for leniency and approval for the variances. The enjoyment of the property, as Greg shared, it's 60 cars, 80 cars. Gravel lots aren't that efficient usually, but it does keep people from parking in the grass. It keeps people from parking off campus, and makes it safer for, especially when it's wet. She already reviewed this. This just shows where the new building will be. Kind of zoom. This is the site that Maddie showed with that highlighted in red, and then zoomed in. You could see that that's going to be completely changed. It gets brought down almost 8 feet from Hamilton Road, so all of that will be dug out as soon as we possibly can. Frankly, we feel a sense of urgency to get these projects done. It's a huge inconvenience that people are still attending through, and we do our best just to eliminate impediments to that. And then this is just a site plan that you'll be seeing in a few weeks here. showing the, you know, the new auditorium and then the site development. So quite a bit, you know, on the future docket here that we're trying to pursue. So, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Now we have opened up to the public. We have 3 speaker slips which have been submitted, and I'll just call these off in the order I received them. First off, Laura Newman. Again, if you could state your name, address, and speak right into the microphone so everyone can hear you.
I'm Laura Newman, and I live on 795 Cherrywood Place, Gahanna. And it's the street that backs up to the church and the school, and I live at the cul-de-sac. So I'm on the south end. I've lived in that home for 26 years, and my children went to Evangel Christian Academy, and then it became Gahanna Christian Academy. And that back in 2005, they were doing a fundraiser to raise over $1 million to build that new preschool. I volunteered over 200 hours of my time to create a marketing campaign because I'm a graphic designer, and put a lot of time into that program, and they raised that money for that preschool. So my concern is, because my house backs up to the church, and originally what I thought was is you're moving the pond over into the existing back parking lot. And, you know, what is going to become of that? So I don't know if that's another meeting. So that's what my main concern is. And because when I look out my back of my house, there's the woods, but once the leaves are off the tree, then you can see the back parking lot. And then also concern for the wildlife because of the purpose of what that pond is for. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker slip I have, Sandy Haynes. Okay.
Hi, I'm Sandy Haynes. I live at 285 Eastchester Court. Our home also borders the one church. And really, I just have a couple of questions to be answered, which is, we talked about all of the plans for the new site. Have those been approved or not at this point? And if not, why is there an assumption of approval already when we're thinking this is a temporary parking lot? So that could be it.
Okay, thank you. Last speaker slip I have, Christy Nelson.
Hello, I'm Christy Nelson. I live at 406 Castle Pines Drive. The Castle Pines condominiums are just north of One Church. I brought a graphic, not as nice as some of the ones we've seen earlier here. We're right adjacent to the new parking lot on the north end that was built in 2023. Since a new parking lot is now being proposed on the south side, we thought we would come and share some of our experiences that we had with the construction of the north parking lot. The north edge of that north lot is set back about 25 feet from Castle Pines Drive. Castle Pines Drive is a street that comes off of Hamilton Road and is along that line. The property line is closer, and it's about 15 feet from the north edge. It's our understanding, and from what we've heard today, that there's a setback being required of 36 feet here on the edge that is facing Hamilton Road. So we have a couple of questions. Does Hamilton Road and Castle Pines Road have different setback requirements? And is the current 15-foot setback from the property line the correct distance? Our second issue relates to the landscaping in the north lot that we've heard a little bit about today. The parking lot on that north edge is about 240 feet in length, and on the west edge of the lot, it's about 125 feet along that west edge. Most of the trees and shrubs have been planted by the Castle Pines Association over the years and time that we've been there. One church has added some arborvitaes in some of the open areas, and you're correct, we did have a meeting, and I was at that meeting, as well as several other members of our board of directors. So what we're concerned about now is the amount of coverage that's been there. One church has planted about 15 arborvitae along the long edge and about 10 along the shorter edge, which is about 125 feet there. In addition, I believe there are some plans to plant some trees in there. These are going to be trees with a trunk and then a crown at the top. So they're not going to provide much of a natural barrier between one church and our properties. Even though they may actually look quite nice, that barrier is not going to be there. So we're concerned that with time and growth, there's not going to be enough adequate insulation between these two properties that insulate us from the pedestrian and the parking traffic that's generated by one church. In addition, the lot is not just used for parking, it's also used for church recreational and entertainment activities that are held on the lot. This just adds to the sound level and the crowd congestion in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Just made it. Okay, since there was public comment, give the applicant some rebuttal time. Again, 10 minutes.
Thanks. Great job, by the way. Need to ask our neighbors to help us with our communication. They did a great job with that. First, I want to say with the northeast lot, we're actually installing the remedies today. So a lot of trees, as Greg shared, we cooperated with Castle Pines to put more arborvitae and kind of adjust the plan so that it was in the places where they wanted it. But as a consequence, we didn't actually follow the plan. So the violation kind of pointed us back to the plan that we had submitted, and now we're actually installing the plan as it was written. So that's all happening literally today. There was, goodness, about, I'm going to say close to a dozen trees that were added. Some of them are evergreen. Some of them are, as Christy explained, they have a canopy, but some are evergreen as well. So I think, we're moving in that direction, and I think we will have adequate screening to fill in those zones. But we're always willing to cooperate with our neighbors. If it's not, we could keep working on it. The other comments, I think, are going to be for future applications, so I'm happy to speak to those. I think Christy also talked about the side setback. We submitted it with a 15-foot side back from the property line because that's a side setback, not from the right-of-way. The right-of-way is 36 feet from that, so that lot was installed correctly and approved by engineering and approved by planning and everybody else. So I think the position of it is fine, but we'll continue to work on screening if that's necessary.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll now open it up for questions from the commission. Start my left, Mr. Shapaka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. David, can you take the speak mic again? If I can, Mr. Chair, can Laura state her comment about the pond in the back? I know it really doesn't cover, it might be part of the design review in a kind of an odd way, but can you state your comment again so David can offer clarification?
I had just heard that.
If you could come up to the microphone, please. Yeah, fine.
I didn't know what cul-de-sac that you were located at, so
Okay.
where you're at in the site.
Okay, the pond, yes. That is correct. You're right. The white roof, just the white roof just south of that, there's a street and a cul-de-sac. So I'm in the circle, but there's woods, and then I look out my back windows and I see that parking lot. And I had heard that that pond was going to be moved to that parking lot. So I don't know if that is correct or not.
Thank you. David, can you clarify?
Yes, and I think I've got a picture of the whole future site. There we go. So this shows to the point another neighbor made, the site that we're asking for approval for that you haven't reviewed yet. So it's still going through the city. If it gets approved, this is the development plan. but again, it hasn't been approved. Oh, the pointer doesn't work. So in that, you could see the proposed new pond location would be actually closer to your house. And so instead of seeing the parking lot, you will see the pond. So.
What is the pond really used for? Is it drainage, or is that basically what it is?
Yeah, it's 100%. It is now. The existing pond is 100%. Its job is to manage stormwater. That's why it was installed initially to be recreational, but it's the only thing that feeds it right now is stormwater. There's no other natural streams or anything else. So the new pond will have that same criteria.
So even though I know everything kind of goes downhill
Yeah,
there,
it kind of goes on an angle, yeah.
and the only concern is like, all, is there going to be, when there's flooding and heavy rain, what's that going to do back there?
Yeah, that's a great question. The
Right now, I have a lot of drainage that comes from, up the hill a little bit, and it just destroys all my landscaping back there.
the
Heavy rain, so I'm just curious if more is going to come down that way.
the entire site has been re-engineered. That's what's actually being under review right now. So we're installing a whole entire new storm system along the south edge of the property. And the site will work the way the topography wants it to. It wants to drain to that corner instead of kind of going uphill to go down. So it's actually going to work better than it does now.
So hopefully it'll drain to the creek then too.
Yes, well, yeah, that's the outlet, 100%. That is the outlet to the site, is that down to the creek, and it feeds, through the city of Gahanna's property. That's where all the water goes from the property.
And then the woods, none of the woods will be touched back there?
We're going to be, I think it's 15 feet on that property, what we proposed. So the tree line will be reduced along that south edge. So that, yeah. But that will be under review in the future meetings, so we can actually look at the detail there.
Thank you, David. Thank you. So get to the front parking lot, so I'm kind of surprised that there's a gravel lot there. I mean, so 21 feet, how was that decision made at that time just to go 21 feet?
It was completely arbitrary, to be honest. We had a little trouble getting the gravel started, and then once it did, we had a hard time shutting it off, and so we ended up with extra gravel on the site, and we made a judgment call, let's do it. And we measured 35 feet, I know it's 36. We measured 35 feet from Hamilton, not from the right-of-way. And so that's what ended up where it was. It was a decision on the fly and irresponsible, frankly. Yeah.
So is the proposed parking lot in the future, is that in the same location, or is that actually set back and meet the requirement?
It's correct, yeah.
And then you mentioned something about 11 weeks?
Yeah.
Would be a timeline, 12 weeks, 15 weeks?
That is pending the approval from the city, so there's a lot of variables in that I can't control. But the best case would be that we would have it in 11 weeks. It's probably not going to be 11 weeks. It'll probably be 16 or 18, but we feel a sense of urgency. We will not be the reason for the delay here. We really want this to happen as fast as it can.
Thanks, Dave. No more questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chapaka. Mr. Hicks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we're getting off on the wrong path with that conversation that's a future application. So I know the residents are concerned and are interested, but stay tuned and maybe come back when that application is here. David, I heard Pastor Greg share that people parked there even before there was gravel. So is it reasonable to assume that if we told you to take up the gravel, people would still park there?
Yes, I think we'd have a very difficult time controlling that.
And if you blocked it off,
Yep.
they would park across the street? Is that
Yes.
reasonable?
Yeah.
Okay. Do people park across the street now, even though you have the additional parking?
Some do, yeah.
Okay.
We have some people. We do try to discourage parking across Hamilton because it is very dangerous. We offer shuttles. The law enforcement officers try to enforce it, and it's just very difficult. people are resourceful and they've got, their own decision-making. So it's difficult to have them control at that level. But yes, we have people park off campus now.
So understanding there is a current project being planned, are you open to a restriction or a modification of this variance application to put a time frame on it? Now, as you heard from staff, it's hard for us to enforce it.
Yes.
So we could say you got to be gone, it has to be complete by next month, and
Right.
really no teeth to it. But are you open to a timeline restriction?
Certainly, and actually to, Maddie had suggested sort of a partial approval, not to lead with my chin here, but we're open to that partial approval as well. If moving the setback back a little bit, we could certainly do that and mitigate it. That was one of the options that we pursued when we filed for the variance. We considered doing that, and I just decided, well, we're asking for variance, let's just ask.
Okay.
But we could do that in the landscape, we could do that and tear it back out. That's not super expensive. That would be, I think, preferential to us over not having it at all for the next several weeks. So,
Thank you. Those are my questions.
All right, thank you. Mr. Greenberg?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Dominy, I guess my questions are, One Church has been in here many times since I've been on the Planning Commission, and for you to have the pastor come in and ask for forgiveness, my question is, what are you going to do as an organization to make sure that you're on the same page with the city so that you don't run into these problems on anything that you make adjustments with on your property?
that's a really good point. I appreciate you bringing it up. I think, honestly, the city has evolved, and so have we. We've gotten better at this. This northeast lot, was, the way that we did it this time was similar to the way we did it before. We kind of cooperated with our neighbors, and then I didn't pay attention to the plans. I know now we must pay attention to the plans, and we're going to make sure that our plans that we have submitted now are actually plans that we can execute. Because even as we were executing the plan and the remedies, there's a little pitfalls in it. It doesn't execute all that well. We followed it, but it doesn't really work all that well, and will be re-inspected because it was a violation, and we'll see how some of those trees are kind of in a poor position. So we're going to really work on the other corridor that we're doing to make sure that can be executed. But we understand we have to follow the plans, and the gravel lot was just a bad judgment call. It was just a bad one.
And I would say that I would agree with Mr. Hicks on a deadline for removing it. And would you suggest a date that you're going to be ready to take it out and move forward? Or you're just saying after these plans are approved, it'll come out within so much time?
100%. That's it. Well, I can't control when it gets approved, but I can certainly control, how the project goes after it is approved. So I could, if we could write up language that says within a certain time period after that, that would be something I could sign in,
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Mr. Siriano?
Yes, two questions. I do have one, or actually two. The first question is probably more for the city. In the instance, and I think Mr. Hicks maybe brought this up, in the instance that the gravel lot was removed and people continued to park on the grass, is that permitted? And then do we enforce that as a city?
Yeah, we would issue a notice of violation through code enforcement.
Mr. Ford kind of indicated that, they had to tow several times in that instance. Okay. Second question probably is for Mr. Dominy, and you may not know this yet, but in the instance that construction projects start, I don't know what sequencing looks like, but do you anticipate that gravel lot being used for layout space at all for construction equipment and materials?
That's a great question. Yeah, the sequencing would be to do the excavation first, get it down to the right level, and then actually make it the construction site for the new auditorium, and then it would probably be the last thing to be paved. But it would still be a lot, but it would be at a completely different elevation, and all the drainage would be in. I mean, everything else would be, the lighting wouldn't be in and the pavement wouldn't be in, but everything else would be correct. It would be the correct setback and all the other topography would be worked out.
Okay.
But we kind of need that dirt for the back.
Yep.
So it all kind of has to happen at the same time.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Serrano. Mr. Tamarkin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to follow up on, dive a little deeper on what Mr. Serrano was just talking about. Run us through, you know, the vision. So in the back, the new construction is going to be an auditorium,
Yes.
which is really going to be partially where this gravel lot is.
Yes.
So the green space here and then into the gravel lot a little is the auditorium.
Yes.
And then there's going to be some paved parking.
Sorry, I misspoke. It won't reach all the way to the gravel lot, actually.
So just in that green space.
Right.
And then there'll be a paved parking lot added.
Yes.
But that's years away, year or two. You know, you got to build an auditorium.
The parking lot, well, the excavation will happen right away because we can't build the auditorium.
So then
without
it
doing
closes
excavation.
everything.
So what's that?
That closes the gravel lot.
Yeah, it will be excavated and lowered, and then all that area comes down. Like I said, it's 8 feet at the top. It's pretty close to the same level, right next to the existing building. But there's a lot of ground there that's got to come out. So that'll all be excavated and brought down first, and then we'll build the auditorium at that. And then the gravel lot where it is will be gravel because it'll be for storm materials and construction. And then as soon as that's up, and as soon as we can pave it, we'll pave it.
But it won't be for parking.
Eventually, yeah, when it's all done, it'll be for
It'll
parking.
be for parking when it's all
Yes,
done.
yes.
But the way it is now will kind of end when construction begins.
Yes, 100%.
So following up on Mr. Hicks's question about timing, the real timing is whenever construction begins, you would propose to close this gravel lot,
Yes,
which you're still dependent on approval of the city, appearing in front of planning commission, and the starting of construction,
yes.
which never goes as fast as you want it to.
It never goes as fast as I want it to, that's for sure.
Yes. All right, and then if we look at here, in order to accomplish that, you're then also in the back there doing lots of new parking arranging, right? Because there's a pond on the top which moves to the bottom, your drainage. So your 500 and some parking spaces you have now without the gravel lot, you're gonna have a period of time where you're gonna have fewer,
Less, much less,
much less.
yes.
Because you're gonna have construction in the back,
Well,
which I guess is to the west.
yeah. We lose 126 parking spaces while we're under construction. Because the existing west lot, the southwest lot, holds 126 cars. So when that's under construction, and then we'll lose this temporary parking of 60 or 80. Because that'll be a hole in the ground, and then it'll be used for construction of the new auditorium, so it won't be usable for guest parking. But the auditorium won't be finished, so we're not going to be trying to house more people. We'll still be using our existing auditorium.
Right.
So
The
it's just,
parking lot in the back should be finished before the auditorium's finished,
that is absolutely our plan, yes.
but it won't be, still won't be fast. And you're gonna run into winter.
If things go perfectly, we'll get it done before winter. But we know, like you said, things go perfectly only when they go perfectly. So there's a lot of things that could, yeah.
So I'll go back to a question asked earlier. If you were gonna make a proposal of when you would stop parking, if we approved the gravel lot on a temporary basis, I guess I'm not as concerned about code enforcement because you're gonna build a building there.
Right.
So, it's not something we'd have to, eventually, it's your plan to get rid of it.
Right.
Give us, again, your timing would be
Yeah, the best case timing, like I said, the best
when you
case
break
timing.
ground for the auditorium.
Right. Yep, exactly right. Which is planned for this fall, would be when we need to do that, but we can't do that until it's approved, of course. So if for some reason the approval gets delayed, to your point, starting construction in January may not be the best call, right? So we would probably start it when the weather breaks towards the end of February, and that would be and then we'd be moving into the whole construction season for everything.
So assume your plans are done,
Yeah.
your
plans are-
contractors
yeah, we're
lined
working-
up.
The contractors lined up for the site development. We have our contractor in place for the auditorium. We have not submitted the construction documents yet. They're going to be submitted in July, the middle of July. We've submitted all the planning documents that you'll be reviewing. So that's the first hurdle, is to get through this planning commission to make sure everybody agrees with what we want to build, and that we propose a plan that our neighbors can agree with and everybody can move ahead with happily. And then while those are being approved, we'll be finishing up our construction documents and then be able to go. So we're running a little bit in parallel with that.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I had
Yeah.
a vision of how things are going to transpire here.
Yeah. You've obviously developed stuff before, so I appreciate it.
Yep. That's it for me, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. So I just one quick question for the applicant. So what's really driving, again, pardon the pun, what's really driving this parking is just the natural conditions you have out there, correct?
Yes.
So it's an existing condition.
You mean attendance?
Well, no, exactly. So
Yes.
so that's what's driving the need for this temporary crane.
Yeah. We feel a sense of urgency to try and, give our guests a place to park, so, yeah.
Okay, and another quick follow-up question. You mentioned that right now people are parking across this, Hamilton Road. Can you give me an idea of, I'm trying to get a picture in my head, where exactly that off-site parking is going to be?
Oh, yeah, Heartland, they could park at Heartland. And again, we just desperately want them to use the shuttle when we do that, because we provide a shuttle, and that's the safest way to cross. Crossing Hamilton is not, it's just not safe, can't be safe. Law enforcement officers have a hard time managing that, so we really try to get them to ride the shuttle. We're also permitted to park at the OSU parking lot. We can't park at CVS because it's operational on Sunday. And so, yeah, people can park off campus in that way.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commission?
Yeah, I'd like to take a couple follow-up, Mr. Chair. Mr. Blackford, how long does it take to get an application through the city?
That's a great question. So applications, largely, the time frame depends on the quality of submittals, to be frank, and the complexity of the project. For planning commission items, the complexity is usually not as complex because we're not getting into all the engineering and that kind of details. That's a separate process. So typically we tell applicants it's maybe a 2-3 month time frame when they submit before they get to planning commission. But again, that's mostly dependent on the applicant and their representatives, how responsive they are, quality of submittals. That can be a few years as well. We've had some take 3-4 years.
And then a follow-up with that would be, can you explain why there's a design review application on this?
Parking lots are required to go through a design review application. That was one of the oddities of the old code, is that parking had to go through a design review application, which never really made much sense to staff either. So it was just this weird code anomaly that was removed from the new code.
And we have to have all the variances for the lighting and the grass, even though we got a temporary.
There's no such thing as temporary in Gahanna. It's either a permanent use or permanent activity or an unpermitted activity. So it's all or nothing.
Good. Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Whenever we try to make an amendment to one of these, we always go in to make a motion for the application, then we take it out, then make an amendment.
I would prefer if the person who makes the motion states the amendments at first.
So if we were going to amend this, we were going to add a time to it, is what we're looking at? So is that a 6-month time?
Are we allowed to put a time restriction or say that a variance is only good for 6 months?
You can certainly say that. The problem is enforcement.
Understood. And I know Mr. Blackford said all or nothing, but I didn't know. The design review doesn't really make sense to modify that. But the variance, could we put a time limit or an expiration date?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, just looking around, is that something that we would kind of want to do? And seeing how long it takes to get construction drawings done and getting something through the process, I mean, that would be a 6-month timeline, not 11 weeks.
Would there be any interest in putting it with the contingent, with the start of construction of the auditorium, which is what's going to cause it to happen anyway?
What if the auditorium does not get approved?
Then we're going to have a timeline. We're back to the
Plan for a
timeline.
hard date, December 31st, and then they would have to come back for an additional variance or start over, essentially,
Is that how it would happen?
unless Mr. Blackford has a objection.
I would just raise that, I would say that the design review also needs to be conditioned, and the reason why is if future applications if plans change, and then we would have a parking lot in an area without the landscaping, without where, again, that parking lot would be approved in that location. It's not supposed to be the plan of development. So I think staff would feel more comfortable if there was a condition, sort of the same time limit. That way, that parking lot goes away in the future regardless of what happens with their current plans that are in review. And that way, they would come back before us with a more permanent plan just for this parking lot, again, if their other application does not go forward.
That sounds cleaner.
Could just pose a question. In the instance that, and I just want to understand, Mr. Blackford, what you were just articulating. In the instance where something holds up plan review of the auditorium and it doesn't, they could submit a design review application, final development plan for a parking lot that potentially could work with the auditorium by itself, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Greenberg?
Yes, I have a question. The city raised the issue of dust control measures, and it sounds like this facility is going to be available for quite some time, and it's going to be through the summer months, and it gets hot and it gets dusty out there. What controls do you have for that, and even when the cars are driving on it on Sunday?
We've not experienced any dust, so we haven't installed any control measures for it. We're happy to do so. I personally don't have experience with that, so I'll have to figure out what that actually is. But again, it's 80 cars. Mostly it's the main service, the most popular service. So in the course of a Sunday of 3 services, it might be 120 cars-ish for the course of all. So it's not that much traffic. So we haven't seen dust. So that's probably not a great answer, I'm sorry.
Yeah, typically the Environmental Protection Agency have calculations for entities to determine whether dust is causing a problem. So you would want to take a look at those.
We have an agency that's helping us through all the environmental stuff now, so we can certainly
Ask them.
employ them to help us out with that. Happy to do it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, do we have a motion to approve DR-0009-2024?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for the amendment for the design review application DR 0009-2024 to include a time frame for the application to be submitted and approved by December 31st, 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Shapaka. Do we have a second?
So clarification, are we saying this expires? So I didn't hear that. So it expires December 31st?
yeah.
Okay, I'll second that.
Second, Mr. Hicks. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Shapaka?
Nope.
Mr. Hicks?
Just general comment, I mean, this isn't something that we would have normally approved if you were asking for permission instead of forgiveness, but I think the circumstances and the conditions I'm comfortable with and will be in support of both applications.
Thank you. Mr. Greenberg?
With the addition of the timeframe, I'll be in support.
Mr. Soriano?
Yeah, I concur with Mr. Hicks. I'll be in support.
Mr. Markin?
No comment.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Shapaka?
Yes.
Hicks?
Yes.
Mako?
Yes.
Suriano?
Yes.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Greenberg.
Yes.
Motion passes. Now, moving on to the variance application. Do I have a motion to approve variance 0015-2024?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for the approval of variance application number V-0015-2024 to amend the application with an expiration date for this application for December 31st, 2024.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Packard. Do we have a second?
Second by Hicks.
Second, Mr. Hicks. Any discussion? Greenberg? Mr. Serrano? Okay. Hearing no discussion, clerk, please call the roll.
Chapaca,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Mako,
Yes,
Suriano,
Yes.
Tamarkin.
Yes.
motion passes. Okay, the next agenda item is a zoning application. It's Z-0001-2024 to recommend to council a zoning application for 2.58 acres of property located at 5061 Shagbark Road, parcel ID 027-000117. Current zoning ER, formerly ER2. Proposed zoning LR4, formerly LMFRD. HC, Shagbark Real Estate LLC, Christoph applicant. Turn it over to you, Ms. Kapka, for a presentation.
This is a rezoning application at 5061 Shagbark Road. This application was also filed under the previous zoning code, and at the time, the site was zoned Estate Residential 2, which is a large lot, single-family residential zoning district. The site is located just east of North Hamilton Road, behind the AutoZone and Firestone sites, and just west of the Woods at Shagbark neighborhood. So this rezoning application is a little bit different than what we normally see since the code changed while the application was still under review, but it is essentially going from an estate residential lot to a multifamily residential lot. ER2 was the former zoning, which is now ER. Those essentially have the exact same development standards, it's just a different name. And the same can be said for MFRD and R4, both of which have very similar development standards and permitted uses. So the site is being proposed to be rezoned to R4 with a limited overlay, which means that there is an overlay text with this application. The overlay text limits the site to residential only and doesn't permit any of the typical conditional uses such as childcare and nursing homes. The applicant is proposing 14 townhome units on approximately 2.5 acres, which comes out to 5.42 dwelling units per acre, which is a pretty low density. In the previous zoning code, when a site was being rezoned to multifamily residential, the applicant either had to dedicate land to the city or pay fees in lieu of that land dedication. The amount of land or fees was based on the size of the project and the lot. The Parks and Recreation Board recommends that Planning Commission go with fees in lieu for this project instead of a land dedication. Fees in lieu were also approved for the most recent multifamily residential rezoning, which was the Morse Road apartment project. There are also no variances required at this time, as the conceptual site plan aligns fully with the zoning code. Here is a location map of the surrounding area that shows some of the nearby neighborhoods and compares their densities with the density of the proposed rezoning, most of which are a very similar density or higher density than what's being proposed today. So I'll just go over some of these. The Polo Club Villas, just south of Morse Road, are attached units at 5.7 dwelling units an acre. The Villas of Gahanna is also a neighborhood of attached units at 6.8 dwelling units an acre. Just south of that is the Vista at Rocky Fork, which is an apartment complex neighborhood, so it's at a much higher density of 14.2 dwelling units an acre. The neighborhood that is just adjacent to the site is the Woods at Shagbark at 5 dwelling units an acre, and these are attached units as well. There is also the Village at Sterling Pines. Once again, these are attached units at 5.8 dwelling units an acre. Just south of that is the Cameron Ridge neighborhood at 16.3 dwelling units an acre, and then the Gahanna Grove neighborhood at 9.5 dwelling units an acre. And finally, the neighborhood that is also very close to the project site is the courtyard at Beecher Crossing at 4.9 dwelling units an acre, and those are attached units as well. So on this map, you can see that the surrounding area contains a lot of neighborhoods that are similar in character to what's being proposed today and have very similar densities as well. Here is a conceptual site plan that was submitted by the applicant. This is a submittal requirement for rezoning applications. This site plan ensures that the proposed rezoning and the uses included in that rezoning will fit on the lot and meet zoning requirements. So this exact site plan is not being approved with the application today. It's just to show that zoning code requirements can be met in the future. So on this site plan, you can see the front and east setbacks. The new zoning code has a 25-foot front yard setback for this zoning district, which is met, and it has a 15-foot side yard setback. Shown on this site plan is actually a 25-foot setback from the side property line, which is greater than what code requires. There are also buffering requirements for this lot. The new zoning code requires a 10-foot buffer between this site and the adjacent sites. This buffer must contain a 6-foot high continuous screen, which can be met with landscaping, fencing, or mounding. And there are also tree planting requirements that go along with that buffer zone as well. So this site plan shows a 15-foot buffer zone around the edge of the property, which exceeds zoning code requirements. Here is a conceptual elevation that was submitted by the applicant. This shows the one building that has 4 units. All of the other units are in duplexes. Once again, this is not being reviewed with today's application. This is just to provide additional context. So as mentioned, there is a limited overlay text included with this rezoning application. This overlay text only permits residential uses and prohibits childcare and nursing/personal care facilities, which are either permitted or conditional uses in both R4 and MFRD, which was the previous zoning, or the previous multifamily residential zoning. There is also language in the overlay text that states that the site will be developed substantially similar to the conceptual site plan, and that will be reviewed with future applications. When looking at rezonings, we also compare the application with the land use plan, which is not a regulatory document, but contains recommendations that are examined when considering future development for the city. The land use plan was adopted in 2019, which was pre-COVID-19, and since then, the demand for office uses has decreased greatly. However, the site is designated as professional office in the future land use map. Professional office allows offices, medical offices, and hospitals and clinics. It recommends a 50 to 60 foot building height, 30 to 50% building coverage, and a density of around 10,000 to 20,000 square feet an acre. So based on these recommendations, an office use on this site would be more intense than the use that is proposed. The land use plan also mentions that Gahanna needs more diverse housing options as the Central Ohio region continues to grow. Here are some next steps for the project. So today, Planning Commission is making a recommendation to City Council. So this is not the final vote on the project. If a recommendation of approval is made to Council, Council will then vote on the rezoning application in the future. If that is a vote of approval as well, then down the line, the applicant will have to submit a major development plan application. And it's with this application that things like site layout, landscaping, and building appearance will be evaluated. Those items aren't evaluated as much with the rezoning application. In the future, a conditional use application will not be required for the proposed use, and the major development plan will only require Planning Commission approval and not Council approval. So the only time that City Council would review this project would be for the rezoning application. If the application is denied by Planning Commission, it will not go to City Council for a vote. This is the rezoning criteria that is evaluated when looking at a rezoning application. So this is consistency with the goals of the land use plan, physical compatibility of property with allowed uses, availability of sites elsewhere that are already zoned for the proposed use, compatibility of all potential uses allowed in the proposed zoning district, capacity of infrastructure, and apparent demand for permitted uses. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning application as submitted, as staff believes that all rezoning criteria has been met. As mentioned, the use is limited to residential only through the overlay text, which is a use that is very compatible with the adjacent land uses. The 14 units at 5.42 dwelling units an acre, staff believes will not have a major impact on the existing infrastructure. Staff also believes that multifamily is an appropriate use for the area and aligns with the adjacent land uses. Although office uses are recommended in the land use plan, these oftentimes generate higher traffic and would have more negative impacts on the area than a multifamily development with primarily duplexes. Multifamily is also in very high demand right now and is one of the most common development requests that staff receives. And we are not aware of any other sites in the city that are zoned R4 and available for development. As mentioned previously, the current layout does not require any variances, but that will be evaluated in further detail with future applications. And that concludes my PowerPoint.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kapka. We'll now open the public comment portion. Would the applicant care to speak? And if you could state your name, address, and association with the project.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Cull. I'm an attorney with Kephart Fisher at 207 North 4th Street, Columbus 43214. And I represent the applicant, and I have here to my rear right the principal of the developer and current property owner, Chris Christoph, who can answer any questions that may be beyond my purview, or he's much more familiar with the details of it. I usually have a great application prepared, but Ms. Kapka probably did it better than I did. We think we have a very reasonable and probably the best use for this parcel. It is well under a lot of the densities in the area. You know, a lot of times there's criticism from developers that they're just maximizing profit, and I think this is a clear example where that's not the case. As Ms. Kapka mentioned, it does meet all 6 criteria, and if there are any refinements needed, that's gonna, the city and this board has additional bites at the apple to help refine if there are things that need to be tweaked. So with that, I'll be quick and done and answer any questions that this body might have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we did receive some speaker forms, so I'll just go through these as they came in. So first off, Cynthia and Stuart Height.
I'm Cynthia Height, and I live at 1168 Shagbark Road. And one of the reasons why my husband and I moved to the woods at Shagbark is because of the woods. So when we look out our front door on the left, there is a nice line of trees that whoever has started doing work there has left there. That's right by the gate to the left. And it doesn't mention anything about those north-facing trees. And I'd just like to appeal to the developer to strongly encourage you to keep those trees there that are, it's a nice barrier. It'd be a barrier for the people who live there and for us as well. That was one of my main things that I wanted to ask. And I was wondering also if I could donate the remainder of my time to Bill, who is also a resident of Shagbark. He has a better proposal that he's put together, and it includes all the other concerns that I had and then some. So would that be possible?
Is he filled out a speaker slip?
Yes, he
So
has.
he'll have his whole 3 minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, I just was wondering if you'd have some in mind. So, okay. And I had one other question. What is the average cost of the units? Do you have an idea of what those will be around?
We'll do a rebuttal after
Okay.
this, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next speaker slip I have is Mr. Bill Miller.
Hi, I'm Bill Miller, and I'm a resident at 1198 Sanctuary Place in Shagbark. I'm here with Bruce Brown, who is a neighbor and a board member for our community, who will talk about zoning overlay texts that we want to add to the zoning plan. We have more of our community here, except that our annual condos meeting, owners meeting is happening at the same time, and the mayor is even speaking there. We generally approve of the zoning change, but with reservations that we will discuss. I gave out a packet to you. Do you all have this packet that I sent out? It includes 5 exhibits and a commentary, and a list of zoning overlay items that will allay most of our concerns in the community. Our concerns are over density, quality, environment, security, economic effects on the woods of Shagbark and their property values resultant from that. If you'll turn to Exhibit A, this is the proposal that you have that was basically in the application. And what we've done is we've added the Woods of Shagbark buildings and the Valvoline easement that was added to the drawings and included in the easement in the appendix. They were all adjusted to conform to a scale of 1 inch is 60 feet. If you turn to Exhibit B, this highlights the slopes on the site. And the pink area that goes through there is basically a 20-foot slope difference in elevation between the bottom and the top of about 20 feet between elevation 900 and 920. At its most critical point, it's 55 feet wide, which is a 36% slope. The southmost portion of the slope has been cleared, but the eastern portion contains many of the trees and large vegetation remaining on the site. Turning to C, Exhibit C, if you go there, the easily buildable area is only about 9/10 of an acre out of the 2.5 in total because of the extreme slopes on the site. And finally, access points. There are 2 access points to the site. One is the Shagbark Road access point and the Valvoline easement access point, and both of those.
Mr. Chair, I'd ask that we give Mr. Miller some more time.
Yep. Yeah, we'll be.
I'm almost done. So.
Okay. Yeah, if you could
I just have one more slide. Both of these are in reality in a different location from what's shown on their proposed plan. Now I realize the proposed plan is not set in stone, but I think this will be instructive as to some of the problems of excessive density on the site. If you turn to Exhibit E, you can see that the Valvoline easement conflicts with one of the building sites, the Shagbark Road access point, if it could possibly, but 4 of the units are actually on that very steep slope, and they would be difficult and expensive to build upon. So I think that shows most of what we want to talk about. We recommend that the locations of the buildings be limited to the flat site area and decrease the number of units to fit comfortably and attractively within the available site area. To keep much of the natural environment as possible, especially on the hillside, and to minimize erosion and provide an attractive atmosphere for potential buyers, and adopt the zoning overlay items included in this package, which Bruce is going to talk about now.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker slip, Bruce Brown.
Hi, I'm Bruce Brown. I live at 1211 Shagbark Road in the woods of Shagbark. And as Bill says, I'm going to go over the proposed zoning overlay restrictions. We have 15 listed. The maximum number of single-family residences allowed on the site should be limited to the physical constraints of the access points and slopes. Buildings shall be sited to avoid disruption or degradation of steep slopes. Removal of trees and vegetation on steep slopes shall be avoided to prevent and deter erosion. A tree survey of large caliber trees showing species, size, and location is required to identify the ones that can be included and preserved as part of the overall development plan. The maximum height of the buildings on the site shall be limited to 2 stories. The only access points to the site shall be through the existing curb cut from the south side of Shagbark Road and through the access easement provided on the south side of the Valvoline site. All roads and driveways on the site shall have concrete curbs. At least 2 visitors' parking spaces shall be provided on the site. Garages shall be double width to accommodate 2 cars parked side by side versus tandem parking. Exterior materials in all buildings shall consist of horizontal vinyl siding, stucco or imitation limestone, similar to materials found on adjacent and surrounding properties. Exterior materials shall have muted colors such as off-white or light beige to harmonize with the surrounding properties. If the single-family residents are to be sold and deeded as separate independent residents, a homeowners organization shall be established in the deeds to ensure the continued proper maintenance of infrastructure and to maintain proper quality appearance standards. The owners of the properties are responsible for any damage resulting from construction traffic or as a result of the ongoing use of Shagbark Road by the residents or visitors after construction is complete. This includes but is not limited to gates, pavement, curbs, fences, plantings and gardens, sprinkler systems, electrical conduits, and lights. The Woods at Shagbark Condominium Association is responsible for the maintenance of Shagbark Road, and the owners of the homeowners organization established for the property shall reimburse the condominium association for any of the above-mentioned damages and also contribute to the ongoing maintenance of the road. The residents and visitors of the Shagbark property shall not be allowed to drive or walk through the woods at Shagbark condo property past the security gate on Shagbark Road. The stormwater detention system shall be designated or designed in a way to be unobtrusive to the site. And lastly, roadways shall be designed in a way to allow passage of large trucks, including fire equipment, fire engines. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, last speaker slip I have is from Elias Undati.
Yes, my name is Elias Duati, and I'm on 4530 North Hamilton Road. And I just wanted to know whether there will be access for vehicles moving or going to the direction of south North Hamilton Road from the proposed property. If there will be a request of having a turning lane so that people who are coming from the property will be able to go south on North Hamilton Road.
We'll have rebuttal time.
Is that okay?
There'll be time for rebuttal from the applicant. Okay. You good? All right. All right. So again, with that, would the applicant like to do a rebuttal for 10 minutes?
Mr. Chair, before the applicant speaks, I mean, the applicant is free to answer whatever he'd like, but a lot of what I heard is not related to a zoning application. So you are free to respond, of course, however you feel, but I don't think that the comments or the questions that were asked apply to this application. So I just wanted to, if you don't want to bother, I wouldn't be bothered.
I try to, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I try to be accommodating, but I didn't quite get the last question, what was being asked. I have difficulty hearing on my left ear, so
Sure.
I can't respond to the last question.
I'll paraphrase. If I missed something, please let me know. But really, the question was about traffic exiting off of Shagbark, turning south on Hamilton Road, and whether or not that's going to be an issue with the timing there of that light, that traffic signal. Is that?
We don't think so. But yeah, I would agree that with Vice Chair Hicks that most of what was presented, if not all, we did get a copy of it. We'll take a look at it. It'll be taken care of through the process and the plan review, and we'd address it then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we'll close public comment, open up questions from the commission. Starting at my left, Mr. Shpaka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Blackford, if this is approved, how high can we build on that for multifamily? There was a comment is limited to 2 stories, but is it 4 stories?
So if there wasn't an overlay text, there wouldn't be as much of a limit on what could be built on the lot because they would be subject to the new standard zoning code. But in the overlay text, it's limited to a certain number of units per building. And because there's also language that says that the site will be developed substantially to the conceptual site plan, they're very limited in what can be built. It needs to be, they can't, because of that language in the overlay text, they can't come back with a development plan that has, 5-story buildings with, a density of 15 units an acre or something like that. It needs to be very similar to what you're seeing in the conceptual site plan today. So there might be minor changes in access and building appearance and maybe building location, but the density is going to be similar to what you see in the conceptual site plan.
Thank you very much for that clarification. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Shpaka. Mr. Hicks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to expand on my comments from earlier, I think the questions are very valid for a final development plan or for a design review. And I encourage the residents to return at that time and bring those questions up. As it relates to the application before us today, it's a rezoning application. And our concerns historically with rezoning applications is the dreaded pivot from what is presented in the rezoning application to what is eventually proposed for the site. I think the overlay text addresses that, but I wanted to share that so when the project moves forward, and if there is a pivot that was not brought before us in the conceptual plan, we will address it at that time. Question to the applicant. Maybe a final development plan question, but talk to me about the easement through the Valvoline property and how you intend to use that for this site.
So the easement is a private easement, and we had long discussions with the city on how that could be used, and there were some possible things. Right now, there is, unless it's been signed, I don't think it's been executed yet. So with the Valvoline property owners, there's a draft, I guess, modification to the easement that would limit it to one way on the easement to restrict, and that was a compromise with that property owner. And there has been work since our final submissions, which I'd be happy to share with this body or send through Ms. Kapka, on slight revisions for alignment with the easement and with the access on Shagbark Road. And there's, from what this body has seen, there's slight changes, as you'll see on the, when we submit the development plan, on exact location of the buildings and a little bit more concentration of that. Does that answer your question?
It does. And again, I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself when it comes back with the site plan and final development plan. I just wanted to share that I would be concerned or interested in how traffic is going to flow through that Vista Drive, through that easement to this property. Now, again, I know we don't know yet, but when that comes back before us, that'll be a point of concern of mine.
Would you mind elaborating a little bit more on what the concern is? Is it on flowing out of the property?
So it's the flow of traffic through the Firestone and the Valvoline. I'm using my hands. I know that's not helpful, but there is a
possible to bring
stub
up
road. There's access to this parcel.
Correct.
Through Vista Drive and a stub road, for my ignorant terms. My concern is, how are you going to use that for traffic into and out of this parcel?
So the plan, unless it's changed, right now it's a two-way easement. It would be limited to traffic into the parcel. That's the agreement. It's in draft form.
Again, but it's not going to impact my feeling on the rezoning, but I will be very interested when this comes back on how that's going to work.
We'll make sure to address that in particular. Thank you.
Great. Those are my only questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Mr. Greenberg?
Mr. Chair, I'd also like to echo Mr. Hicks's concerns. In other applications with Valvoline coming in, we had many discussions about the use of that road and how it would impact the condominiums at Shagbark. So I think, and again, noted that we'll be very interested in how that's handled. Mr. Blackford, a question. The land use plan, do you adjust the plan if this goes through, gets rezoned? It's not a living document, it stays the way it was?
Correct. Great question. So that would not be updated until, there's a land use plan refresh type of thing. But again, it's a very high-level conceptual document, and I will say that when that particular property was designated professional office, there were some major concerns because it was not on a major roadway, back adjacent, but I did not win that discussion in that. But ultimately, when there is a refresh, it probably, again, it might be adjusted accordingly. Yes, sir.
Okay. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Mr. Siriano?
No questions from me. Thank you.
Mr. Markin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do understand, there'll be a final development plan. I'd just like to expand on Mr. Hicks' concerns with the traffic. I want to make sure, because I think it is relevant to how the property is zoned. Shagbark, it is, our last speaker noted, you didn't hear the questions real well, but I think it was very relevant. Shagbark is a right-in, right-out only, right? There's a median there. So the residents of the Shagbark condos go out by Giant Eagle, but there's a gate. So your residents will not be able to get to Giant Eagle to turn left to go south on Hamilton Road. If you make the Valvoline entrance in only, and if you look at the Google Maps, Valvoline has arrows there in the Valvoline parking lot. There's a counterclockwise rotation around their building. So they're asking you to, cars only move west to east past the Valvoline on the south side of their building. So you're not going to have a way for your residents to go south on Hamilton Road without either making an illegal U-turn or going into Giant Eagle or Stone Ridge and turning around in their parking lot. Agree? Disagree? Thought about it? Haven't thought about it?
Agreed. That's, right now, that's, you know, is there now ammunition for us to go back to Valvoline and press? Could everyone hear that?
No. It has to go into the microphone too, because people are watching
Sorry,
the video.
I almost put my lips on it. The one-way can be switched to out. So through Valvoline can go out, but the limitation was one way.
And because of that same restriction is why those 3 parcels that are between Shagbark and Giant Eagle are vacant and don't sell, is because the in and out is horrible. So those are 3 very valuable pieces of land that nobody can give away because of the traffic, the way they're set up. So that is, like I said, that is relevant. That's my only comment, though, for this portion.
Thank you, Mr. Tarkin. Quick question for Mr. Blackford. Would I be correct to assume Shagbark Road is going to be publicly dedicated right away? No?
It is a private road.
Okay, and that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to access this site. I mean, I'm assuming that you can't deny anyone access to their properties.
This was something that was researched by our engineering staff. We knew that this would be an issue that needed to be, at least addressed sooner rather than later. And not that I was around or anything at that point in time, but yes, Shagbark's private drive. Yes, this site has access and the rights to access to it.
Okay,
So-
and that was what I was wondering, just how you get from point A to point B.
We had to compile, 50 years of easements that show, it would have been great if there was one easement document, a declaration or something like that that showed it. There's, I don't know, I think when I compiled it, it was like 12 different easements over the course of 50 years that, collectively showed indisputably there's an easement there.
Okay, and the easement that's going through Valvoline, again, that was done a long time ago, and it's been recorded and gives the grantor and grantee rights of access through there.
Yes, and we submitted that to the city. It was part of the package as the issue came up. What hasn't been recorded yet is the amendment to that easement.
Okay. Those are my questions. Anything else from the commission? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve case Z-0001-2024?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move Z-0001-2024 to recommend approval to City Council for a zoning application for 2.58 plus or minus acres at 5061 Shagbark Road.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Greenberg. Do we have a second?
Second, Suriano.
Second by Mr. Soriano. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Baca?
I will be in favor of the rezoning classification, but there's a lot of strict kind of limitations that will have to be processed as we move forward. Outside that, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hicks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also am in favor of the application for some specific reasons. The existing zoning is not really a useful zoning in our city today, ER. You can't rezone to it, so rezoning away from it makes sense. Multifamily makes sense here. especially with the overlay suggestions. Even though the land use plan recommends something different, this is, as the administration's shared, is less intense than what the land use plan recommends. So I am in support of the rezoning and with the overlay, or in support of recommending approval. And just alluding to an earlier comment about the proposed overlay restrictions not being appropriate, I'm not in favor of putting design review or final development plan restrictions in a zoning overlay. A prior administration, well, a few administrations ago, did that to the Beecher Road and Hamilton Road property. That was a disaster and remains a disaster today to get that parcel developed. So we should never put development plan and design review restrictions in an overlay on a parcel. It's a disaster. So I'll be in support.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Mr. Greenberg?
Mr. Chair, I will be in support, and like my other colleagues, I'm also going to be very interested in seeing how final design plan and everything comes back to us, especially traffic flow. I think that's going to be very important as we review this down the road. Thank you.
Mr. Anno?
Yes, I'm also going to be in favor of this recommendation. I seem to have shared a brain with my colleague, Mr. Hicks, tonight, but I wanted to echo that I also am not in favor of final development plan or design review overlays on zoning applications. I think it takes the hands, or it ties the hands of design professionals that actually would look to develop and create something for the site with a development, and it enables or it dissuades us from and doesn't enable us to kind of see around corners. There's invariably always something that gets missed or an opportunity that gets missed, so I'm not in favor of that. I am in favor of the site. I'll really only comment on the zoning application as it relates to the rezoning, not necessarily to a conceptual plan. But I think when we look at the current zoning as a state, moving away from that, I think we do have we have a housing shortage and a housing need here. I look at two, especially looking at the land use plan. I look at suburban office that's adjacent to it. I also look at the multifamily that's adjacent to it on the north side. So to me, this rezoning makes a lot of sense. And is consistent with and compatible with what I see around the property.
All right, thank you. Mr. Markin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll also be in support, following up on my colleagues. I think ER is an outdated zoning classification for this property. Nobody's going to build an estate here in this location. And the city, or the preference in the for an office there is probably not the right thing today. It's ingress and egress is too tough. If his property was facing Hamilton Road, it'd be perfect for office use. But I think where it's located, one tier back for the land use plan, I think multifamily is the best use. And from the neighbors, in fairness to them, multifamily is better than putting office or putting medical or some urgent care, something like that in there. So I think this is the best use, and we said it many times in this chambers. Land is going to get developed. So it's nice to look at trees. It's nice to have trees, but somebody owns it. The owner isn't going to keep it as trees forever, and it will be developed. And this is probably the best use to develop that land.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Markin. And I'm also going to be voting in favor. Again, I think what's been said by my colleagues here is correct. I think that the proposed land use is in concert with what's surrounding. I hope you have some good feedback, some good food for thought coming not only from your neighbors, but also here from the commission. So have some work to do as we get to that final development plan. So again, I hope you have some good feedback and spurs some thought. But with the rezoning, I'm also going to be in support. So with that, clerk, please call the roll.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Suriano?
Yes.
Shapaka?
Yes.
Tamarkin?
Yes.
Hicks?
Yes.
Mako?
Yes. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, staff.
Okay, next agenda item, new business. I don't believe we have any. Official reports. Assistant City Attorney.
Nothing to report at this time, except it's very cold over here. I'm freezing.
Director of Planning.
Just for the record, Maddie is also very, very chilly in here tonight. Just one thing to probably note is I don't believe we're going to have any agenda items for the July 10th hearing, so enjoy.
Council Liaison.
Nothing tonight.
I see Madam Mayor is not with us tonight, and I also have no official report. Any correspondence or actions?
No, sir.
All right, member comment, Mr. Shapaka. Mr. Hicks?
Just thank you to the residents that showed up to speak, even though this might not have been the appropriate time for some of the questions. The residents of Shagbark have always been a very involved and interested group and provide great feedback. So hope to see you back as this moves forward and bring your concerns back. So thank you.
Mr. Hicks? Mr. Greenberg? Mr. Suriano?
No comments.
Mr. Tamarkin?
No comments.
And I don't have any comments, just wishing everyone a happy 4th of July next week. So with that, motion to adjourn?
So moved.